In this fourth and final video of Chapter 8, we will look at gender differences in academic achievement. And let's begin with the boys. It's becoming more difficult for boys than for girls to be successful in school. And there's a few reasons that they suggest this is why this is happening. They say that it may be issues in the curriculum, biological differences between boys and girls, and then socioeconomic status comes into play as well. Let me talk about each of these. So over time, they say that the school curriculum has emphasized reading and writing more and more, and that this benefits girls more than boys, whereas having less labs, physical education, and recess hurts boys because of the experiential learning style of boys. So boys do better in hands-on type learning situations, which would include lab work and physical education and recess. Girls do better with reading and writing. Well, why might girls do better with reading and writing, particularly in the earliest grades? Well, research shows that the language center in the brain develops quicker in girls than in boys. So in a comparison, they found that the language center in 5-year-old boys is equivalent to the language center in 3-year-old girls. So basically the girls' language center is early in life is a couple of years ahead of the boys' language center in the brain. So this is why the curriculum changes that emphasize more reading and writing benefits girls more than boys. However, let me just say that there's been a recent reanalysis of these results, and particularly of the performance of boys in school. And what they found is that mainly affected are minority boys and boys from disadvantaged families. But if you look at middle class and upper class boys, they're doing as well or better than in the past. So these research results showing that's more difficult for boys than in the past. Well, it really just applies to, once again, minority boys and those from disadvantaged families. Okay. What about girls? Well, we're going to look at girls in STEM fields. STEM means science, technology, engineering, and math. And in case you don't know, females tend to be underrepresented in those areas. So as it says here, although 60% of bachelor degrees are awarded to women, they earn only 20% of the degrees in engineering, computer science, and physics. Well, why is this? The major reason is that there has been a long-standing stereotype that girls are not good at math, which would affect all of these areas: science, technology, computer science, physics, etc. And this long-standing stereotype is really inaccurate, but it's still very prevalent in society. If ask your parents, and the average person in society will still maintain that males are just generally better at math than females are. What the evidence shows and research shows that girls frequently earn better grades in math during elementary and high school than boys do. So even though they may outperform males during elementary to high school, they still end up, um, working in these fields much less, or receiving degrees in these fields much less than the boys do. Uh, so this stereotype affects, the reason that it has such a major effect is it affects the teachers. Many teachers still buy into it. Many parents still buy into the stereotype. And most importantly, a lot of girls are being brought up believing in the stereotype themselves. One intervention that can help is that they showed that you can reduce this misconception in the girls if you teach them that the brain is like a muscle and that it grows and changes with use. Remember, this is kind of what we learned about when we talked about brain plasticity, and that it's not something that's set in stone and fixed and unchangeable. Um, there's a name for this. It's called learning about a growth mindset. So growth mindset is the understanding that your brain changes with use. So it changes with effort. If you are doing well in school in math, then your brain is changing to support that, and that you can have a future in math or science. The other type of mindset is called a fixed mindset. That the brain is fixed and unchangeable, and it's completely untrue, but it is another very common belief in the United States. Many people believe, much of society believes that we're just born with a certain brain, and you're stuck with it and it won't change. And so if you believe in the stereotype and you believe in a fixed mindset, then you kind of look upon it as, well, girls are destined not to do well in sciences and math because they're born with inferior mathematical brains, and even if they do well in school, they still won't change the fact that they'll be behind the superior mathematical male brain. So once again, this is all based on a stereotype that's incorrect, and it's based on the fixed mindset idea that exists within the United States. If we can overcome that once again and teach the girls about brain plasticity and about the growth mindset, that if they work at something that their brains will improve in that area, that this actually it has been shown to have benefit. So let's look at how this incorrect stereotype affects girls. They get differential treatment in their classes. Research shows that girls' ideas in math and science classes and their contributions tend to be devalued by the teachers. When they do well, their success is attributed to hard work rather than any kind of natural ability. Boys, on the other hand, it's seen as being more natural ability when they do well. So it's kind of like, oh, she got an A, just like some of these boys. She must have worked really, really hard, harder than they did in order to get that grade. Whereas the boys, well, they're just naturally good at math, and so it's not an equal footing. It's kind of like she's performing above her level only through like massive hard work, and that she can't possibly have the same ability as the boys in the class. And once again, I'm saying all this as these are very common perceptions, but it's certainly not everyone. I mean, there's a lot of teachers that know better by now, and but research shows that once again, it's still very prevalent within society. So it affects parents as well. So it's affecting the teacher. It's affecting the girls, the teachers. It affects the parents. Parents see the same thing. They attribute the success of boys to once they get to natural ability, and when their girl children do well, it's through effort, if it's in math or science. Um, One other way that the girls are directly affected is through something called stereotype threat. And stereotype threat is the anxiety that results when an individual feels like that their performance may confirm a negative stereotype of some minority group that they belong to. And so this extra anxiety will actually work to lower their performance. So just to give you some examples of how it works, I mean, like, let's say you're a girl and you go into some kind of math competition because you're good at math, and it's mainly all males there, and you know that males typically win this math competition. I mean, so you're a minority as a female in this competition, and so you're the extra anxiety comes from the thought that if I don't do well, everyone's going to be saying it's because I'm a girl. Whereas, if a boy doesn't do well, people don't say, oh, he didn't do well at that because he's a boy. They would say he had a bad day or he wasn't prepared. But for the girl, they would say, oh, it's because she's a girl. And this is, so whenever there's some kind of field that's dominated by one group and you are a member of a minority, and then this stereotype threat comes into play. Think about like the first female referees and things like that. I mean, we've recently, had more and more females becoming referees in the major sports. But imagine, you're among these first ones. I mean, if one of these referees, whether it's a football or hockey or basketball or whatever, I mean, one of these referees makes a mistake, they know that everyone's going to be going, oh, it's because she's a woman, that's why she didn't make the call right. And so that's a lot of added pressure. That's what stereotype threat is. You know that you're representing a minority group and that any negative performance will be blamed on that. And so it's added anxiety and stress and pressure. Stereotype threat also gets used very much with racial minority groups. So, for instance, it's been used to explain the poor performance of Black children on things like IQ tests. If they are a significant minority in the school and they're aware of certain stereotypes that exist, then they know that if they do poorly on something like an IQ test or an any kind of test, that they believe, they're going to feel the pressure that people will say it's because they're Black. And so this happens with, racial minority groups. It happens with gender. If you're a gender minority, like in a particular field. Another example would be something like a woman going for a mechanic's job. It's a very male-dominated field. If she makes a mistake trying to fix a car or something, she knows everyone's going to snicker, all the males that are around, and say it's because she's a female. So this is a real thing, and hopefully you can just kind of imagine like that feeling of if I mess up, everyone's going to say this particular thing, that it's because I'm this or I'm that. And research has really shown that it can have a powerful negative effect on performance. So you're worried about performing bad, and that anxiety actually makes you perform worse. Okay, let's go on. Well, perhaps the answer then is single gender classrooms. Let's separate the males and the females, and that way there won't be this differential treatment within the classrooms, and there won't be this stereotype threat existing because the girls will be among other girls and the boys among other boys. Anyways, it turns out that studies conducted on single gender classrooms have found that they actually do not end up benefiting either the boys or the girls. And so this turns out to be, although maybe sounding like a good idea, it turns out not to actually work in practice. And they have found no significant benefits to separating males and females as far as the STEM fields and what we've talked about, and stereotype threat and things like that. Okay, this brings us to the last few slides, and I always leave this section for students to read on their own, and I do want you to go over it on your own. You will be responsible for it on the test. So this last section is about ethnic, racial, and cultural influences on school achievement. Make sure you understand what expectancy effects are, what a self-fulfilling prophecy is. Then hopefully you understand that there is a significant impact of poverty on academic achievement. Read more about that in the book. You cannot downplay the impact of poverty on how well people do in school. It has a significant effect. I've already talked about, it certainly affects IQ, and so it also affects school achievement. And something I mentioned earlier was Head Start programs. This is kind of an attempt to try to level the playing field a little bit for those children that start off in more disadvantaged circumstances. And so they might be lagging behind, early in school, in kindergarten, in grade 1. And so an early Head Start program is about quality preschool education, so that children from more disadvantaged backgrounds can enter school up to speed, and being at the same level as those that had a better start in life. So I do want you to make sure you read about that as well. And it is a very worthwhile program and helps many, many children throughout the United States. We could do a lot more of it, though. And I hope you would think about how, wouldn't it be nice if every child had the more of an equal start in life, and that we didn't determine who gets better educated, because of things like which parents have more money. Okay, anyways, do read this last section. The textbook does a fine job of talking about it. And that will conclude our look at Chapter 8.